Hello, everyone, and welcome to another ship overview. And today we're going to actually talk about, in my opinion, the most unforgiving, unrepentant jerk of the Imperial Navy cruiser class. This vessel is by far the best Imperial Navy basic baseline cruiser. And it doesn't really follow the standard convention of the Imperial Navy cruiser doctrine because it's not all about the guns. This is a carrier. Now, a lot of people are going to look at this and go, wait a minute, why would a Imperial Navy, a gun-oriented fleet, have such an incredibly powerful carrier? Mostly on the basis of it still follows the Imperial Navy doctrine of bombarding your enemy and then making them weep when you finally get close. The reason why the Dictator is so astoundingly good is principally because of the way the rules function when it comes to reload ordnance. So first, we're going to talk about its stats. It has a slightly modified, what I call a carrier stat line, which is the baseline cruiser, but it has +1 turret. Generally speaking, in Battlefleet Gothic, carrier vessels have one additional turret, basically to represent that they recognize that these ships are going to be focused on by enemy carrier groups and by enemy ordnance more often. It has as armament port and starboard launch bays for fighters and bombers. It has a standard cruiser strength 6 weapon battery for port and starboard, and critically, prow torpedoes. There are no direct upgrades to the vessel, though you do have the option of upgrading the vessel to have mine layers if you so desire, or torpedo bombers if you so desire, though I find those upgrades to be entirely unnecessary for the Dictator. The purpose of the Dictator is simply to be a rock. It's a giant lump of hardened anger that dumps its anger on everything it doesn't like. It moves directly towards an enemy target, dumping torpedoes at its target every single round, while launching fighters and bombers to irritate the hell out of your enemy. This vessel has so much importance to the Imperial Navy that it's actually ultimately more useful than the Mars battlecruiser, which I will go over later. This vessel is meant to stick with your fleet, give it fighter support, dump bombers into the enemy, and be able to survive oncoming enemy fire. The best thing you can do with the Dictator is squadron it with another Dictator, simply because if one isn't good enough, two obviously will. Brute force methodology, which is a constant theme in every Imperial Navy fleet. The Dictator Cruiser is easily my favorite cruiser, simply because one reload ordnance special order reloads both your squadrons of fighters and bombers and your torpedoes at the same time, which means this thing is going to be dumping out incredible amounts of ordnance. Now, here's the downside to that. Your enemy knows this. Your enemy is going to see immediately when you put down torpedo tokens and bomber and fighter tokens, oh, that's a problem that I now have to deal with. This is the distraction that you need the Gothic and the Dominator and the Lunar to become so the enemy doesn't focus on your Dictators. Because ultimately, your Dictators, when it comes to direct firepower, are not particularly that strong. They only have a strength 6 weapons battery. Now, that can be augmented if you decide to squadron it with a Gothic or squadron it with a Lunar, but ultimately what you should be doing, at least in this humble captain's opinion, squadron it with another Dictator and just dump ordnance into your enemy. Nonstop. And when you get close to your enemy, well, you have the option of ramming because it can take a ram spike. No reason not to take it if you got the points. Or you can combine the advantage of a torpedo launch at your enemy and then force them to decide if they want to, shoot their turrets at your torpedoes that you're shooting, or the inevitable bomber waves that you're going to be dumping into them. The strength 12 opportunity for two squadron Dictators is enough to make a battleship consider its life choices, and a strength 8 bomber squadron is enough to fold virtually any other ship in the game in half. Now, when it comes to weaknesses, obviously your enemy is going to notice you. And ultimately, this does not have a lot of direct firepower, so if you are ever forced to brace for impact, you're not going to be launching your torpedoes and you're not going to be launching your fighters, and you have a pitiful little strength 6 weapons battery to work with, or even a mediocre strength 12 if they're squadroned. So these are things you have to bear in mind when you're using your dictators. They are a rock. They are an anvil. They're what protects the rest of your fleet. They have to be protected, but they're also very aggressive. So it is the equivalent of having a shield and then beating your opponent to death with it. So that is the Dictator class cruiser. They are the best carrier, ultimately, point for the entire Imperial Navy. And when I go on to the other carrier vessels, I will explain why they do not necessarily match up to the Dictator as a whole, though that does not mean you shouldn't take them because of the other opportunities that those carriers do provide. All right, I hope you all enjoyed this video. I'll talk to you all again really soon.